How can you feel so alone when you're sitting right next to the person who promised to always see you? The question echoed in Leona Whitaker's mind as she stood by the kitchen island in her apartment, the gentle Seattle rain tracing lazy rivulets down the tall windows behind her. Outside, the city was just waking, a muted chorus of buses hissing along wet asphalt, distant horns, the faint hum of life rising with the gray dawn. Inside, it was almost silent, except for the soft burble of the coffee maker and the quiet tap-tap of Miles's fingers on his phone. Leona reached for 2 mugs, her usual routine, even though lately she was the only one drinking. She poured the coffee, careful not to spill a drop, and set one mug at the edge of the table, aligning the handle just the way Miles liked it. He barely glanced up, eyes fixed on his screen, thumb scrolling through what she guessed was a news feed or a work message. His face, illuminated by the cold blue light, was unreadable. She hesitated, searching for a way in. "Morning," she offered, her voice soft but hopeful. Miles nodded, not looking up. "Hey." The word hung in the air, thin as vapor. Leona waited for more, but it didn't come. She wrapped her hands around her mug, savoring the heat, and watched the rain outside, the city's skyline blurring into the clouds. Their apartment was beautiful, in a way that felt curated. Clean lines, exposed brick, soft gray furniture, and plants in every corner. The kind of place that looked like it belonged in a magazine, but lately felt more like a showroom than a home. She had chosen most of the decor herself, hoping to create warmth, a place people wanted to linger. But sometimes, even she wanted to leave. As she sipped her coffee, she tried again. "Did you sleep okay?" Miles finally looked up, blinking as if surfacing from underwater. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind." He reached for his mug, took a perfunctory sip, then set it down and picked up his phone again. Leona watched the way his brow furrowed, the way his attention was pulled somewhere she couldn't follow. She wondered if he even noticed her sitting across from him, or if she had become as much a part of the background as the rain. She glanced at the time, 7:09. In less than an hour, she'd be sitting in another sleek open-plan office, surrounded by glass walls and the hum of computers, where people barely noticed her unless they needed something. She tried not to think about that now. Across the table, Miles's phone buzzed. He frowned, typing quickly. "Sorry, work thing. They're launching a new update today." Leona nodded, the words familiar. She watched his hands move, the gold ring glinting on his finger, a symbol of promises made, of always and forever. Sometimes it felt like a relic from another life. The rain intensified, drumming a steady rhythm against the glass. She wished she could say what she felt, but instead, she stood, gathering her things for work. "Have a good day," she said quietly. Miles mumbled something she couldn't quite catch. The moment passed, and Leona slipped on her raincoat, stepping out into the drizzle, half hoping he'd call her back, half knowing he wouldn't. The city was a blur of umbrellas and hurried footsteps, steam rising from grates as Leona made her way downtown. She ducked into her office building, shaking water from her hair, and took the elevator up to the 18th floor. The marketing office was as modern as the rest of the city. White desks, glass partitions, plants on every surface. People moved in clusters, chatting about campaigns, weekend plans, the weather. Leona settled at her desk, arranging her pens and notebook with a precision that comforted her. She glanced around, catching snippets of conversation, but no one seemed to notice her arrival. She was accustomed to this. Quiet competence, steady results, but somehow always just out of focus. The morning meeting started, her manager's voice cutting through the room. "Let's go over last week's numbers. Jada, can you walk us through the social analytics?" Jada Kim, her closest friend at the office, flashed a confident smile and launched into a brisk summary. Leona watched her, admiring the way Jada commanded the room's attention. When it was her turn to speak, Leona offered her insights, clear and well-reasoned, but the conversation quickly moved on. Her ideas hung in the air for a moment, then faded. After the meeting, Jada caught up with her by the coffee machine. "Hey, you okay? You seemed a little quiet in there." Leona managed a smile. "Just tired, I guess." Jada looked at her, eyes sharp with concern. "Let's grab lunch later. My treat." Leona nodded, grateful for the offer. She watched Jada breeze away, her presence as bright and unmistakable as sunlight on water. Sometimes Leona wondered what it would be like to move through the world like that, to be seen without having to ask. Later that evening, Leona walked home under a sky that never quite cleared, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement. The apartment was quiet when she arrived, Miles's shoes by the door, his laptop open on the couch. She set her bag down, took a deep breath, and steeled herself. She found him in the living room, headphones on, eyes fixed on lines of code. She waited until he looked up, then sat beside him, close enough to touch. "Hey," she said gently. "Do you remember what next week is?" Miles glanced at her, distracted. The product launch?" She shook her head, a small, hopeful smile tugging at her lips. "Our anniversary." He blinked, then grimaced. "Right, sorry, Leona. I've got a big release at work. Can we maybe celebrate the weekend after?" She felt the words land, heavy and cold. She forced a nod. "Sure, I just thought, never mind. It's fine." Miles returned to his screen, the conversation already over in his mind. Leona sat there for a long moment, staring at the pattern of raindrops on the window, listening to the city's distant heartbeat. She tried to shake the feeling, but it lingered, clinging to her like damp clothes. Days blurred into one another. Miles leaving early, coming home late, always just out of reach. At work, she faded into the background, her efforts invisible among louder voices. Even with Jada's lively company, the sense of being unseen trailed her like a shadow. One Friday, she saw a photo on social media, Miles at a happy hour with his coworker Rafael Torres and a group from the tech company. Miles's arm was slung around Rafael's shoulder, both grinning, glasses raised in a toast. She hadn't known about the event. She hadn't been invited. She stared at the picture for a long time, her thumb hovering over the screen. She wanted to text him, to ask why he hadn't mentioned it, but the words felt heavy and pointless. That evening she made dinner, his favorite, lemon garlic salmon, roasted potatoes, a green salad tossed with care. She set the table, lit candles, tried to create something special, hoping it might draw him out. Miles arrived late, phone pressed to his ear, muttering apologies to someone at work. He barely noticed the meal, grabbing a plate and eating quickly, distracted. When she tried to talk about her day, he nodded absently, eyes darting back to his phone. Finally, she pushed her chair back, the scrape of wood on tile louder than she intended. Miles looked up, surprised. "Everything okay?" She forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." He nodded, already turning away. That night, as she lay in bed, the city's glow filtering through the curtains, Leona stared at the ceiling, tracing cracks in the paint. She remembered the early days, late-night conversations that stretched until dawn, laughter over takeout, promises whispered in the dark. She remembered the way Miles used to look at her, as if she were the only thing in the room. Now she felt like a ghost in her own life, present but unseen. The next morning, she watched Miles get ready for work, moving through their apartment with practiced efficiency. She wanted to reach out, to ask for more, but the words tangled in her throat. He kissed her on the forehead, a gesture so automatic it almost stung. "See you tonight," he said, grabbing his laptop bag. She nodded, watching him go. When the door closed, the silence settled like dust. At lunch, she met Jada at a bustling cafe near the office. The place was crowded, the air thick with the scent of coffee and pastries, voices overlapping in a comforting din. Jada slid into the booth across from her, eyes bright. "You look like you could use a pick-me-up," Jada said, waving over a waiter. Leona laughed, the sound thin but genuine. "It's been a week." Jada leaned in, her expression serious. "Is it work, or—" Leona hesitated, then shook her head. "It's Miles. I feel like I'm fading, like he doesn't even see me anymore." Jada reached across the table, her hand warm on Leona's. "You can talk to him, you know. You deserve to be heard." Leona nodded, looking down at her coffee. "I know. I don't want to make things worse." Jada squeezed her hand. "You won't. But you can't keep shrinking yourself, Leona. Not for anyone." The words lingered, echoing in her mind long after they left the cafe. That evening, as the rain eased and dusk painted the city in blues and golds, Leona walked home alone. She passed couples huddled under umbrellas, families laughing in the glow of restaurant windows. She wondered what it would feel like to be truly seen, to have someone look at her the way she looked at them. When she reached the apartment, she stood outside for a moment, watching the light spill from their windows. Inside, Miles would be working, headphones on, the world narrowed to a screen. Leona pressed her palm to the cool glass of the front door, feeling the city's pulse beneath her skin. She looked up, meeting her own reflection, a woman on the outside, searching for a way in. She turned, looking directly into the camera, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Have you ever felt invisible to someone you love? The city lights flickered behind her, and for a moment, the world held its breath. Leona pressed her fingertips into the edge of the kitchen island, watching steam curl from her untouched mug. The rain outside now fell in a steady rhythm, a soft percussion that seemed to underscore the quiet distance between her and Miles. He sat at the dining table in his usual spot, laptop open, face bathed in the cold glow of another early morning meeting. She watched the subtle crease between his brows as he typed, lips pressed in concentration. It was a look she knew well, except lately, she realized, she only recognized it from across a room, never up close. She hesitated, then tried again. Miles, did you see the email from our building about the elevator repairs? We might need to leave a little early tomorrow. He nodded absently, eyes never leaving the screen. Yeah, I'll figure it out. His fingers kept moving, his attention as distant as the city stretching beyond the rain-streaked glass. Leona let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She sipped her coffee, the bitterness settling on her tongue, and wondered if the conversation had even happened. Later that morning, the elevator at her office shuddered to a halt on the 20th floor, and the door slid open to reveal the familiar chaos of the marketing team's workspace. Phones rang, keyboards clicked, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Leona stepped out, her heels muffled by the thick industrial carpet, and slipped into her cubicle. She set down her tote bag, trying to shake off the heavy feeling that clung to her shoulders. Jada Kim's voice floated over the partition. Leona, you made it through Monday morning traffic. That's worth celebrating. Jada's smile was infectious, her dark hair pulled into a playful bun, a pop of color in her striped blouse. Leona managed to smile. Barely. The rain's not helping. Jada leaned in, lowering her voice. Hey, are you okay? You look, I don't know, like you're somewhere else. Leona hesitated, glancing around. The office buzzed with energy, but she felt separate from it, as if she were watching through glass. I just didn't sleep well. Jada's eyes softened. Want to grab coffee later? Real coffee, not the stuff they brew in the break room. You can tell me what's going on. Leona nodded, grateful. Yeah, that sounds good. By lunchtime, the city's drizzle had let up, replaced by a gauzy gray sky. Leona and Jada ducked into a bustling cafe a block from the office. Concrete floors, chalkboard menus, the air thick with the scent of espresso and fresh pastries. They found a small table by the window. Leona curled her hands around her cup, watching drops roll down the glass. Jada cut straight to the point. So, spill. Is it work? Home? Leona stared into her coffee, voice barely above a whisper. It's Miles. I feel like I'm invisible to him lately. Like I could disappear and he wouldn't even notice. I plan things, try to talk, but he's always distracted. It's like I'm a roommate, not his wife. Jada listened, nodding. Have you told him how you feel? A flush crept up Leona's cheeks. Not really. I mean, I've tried, but he's always busy. I'm worried if I push, it'll just make things worse. Maybe I'm expecting too much. Jada reached across the table, her hand warm over Leona's. You're not asking for too much. You deserve to feel seen. But he can't fix what he doesn't know. Try to talk to him. Really talk. Leona's eyes stung. She blinked hard, forcing a smile. I'll try. The noise of the cafe swelled around them. Clinking mugs, laughter, the hiss of milk steaming. Leona wondered how many people in this room felt the same way. Present, but not really seen. Back at the office, the marketing department gathered in the glass-walled conference room for the monthly project review. Leona slid into a chair, notebook in hand, as their manager, Priya Patel, began assigning new campaign leads. Leona's heart pounded. She'd spent weeks refining her proposal for the upcoming product launch, hoping this would finally be her chance to lead. Priya scanned her notes. Okay, for the Greenview account, I'm putting Brian in as lead. Leona, you'll support with content strategy. Leona felt her stomach drop. She managed a polite nod as Brian beamed, high-fiving a colleague. Her hands tightened around her pen. It was the third time this quarter she'd been passed over. She tried to listen as Priya moved on, but her mind drifted. Even here, where she worked so hard, her efforts seemed to vanish. At the end of the meeting, Jada caught up with her in the hallway. You deserve that lead. I don't get it. Leona shrugged, forcing brightness into her voice. It's fine. Maybe next time. But the words tasted hollow. She kept her head down as she returned to her desk, feeling smaller with every step. The sky was already darkening by the time Leona left work, a curtain of mist turning the city lights into blurry halos. She pulled her coat tighter and started the walk home, weaving through crowds of commuters, their faces half hidden by umbrellas and scarves. She paused at a crosswalk, glancing through the glowing windows of a restaurant. Inside, couples laughed over dinner, hands reaching for wine glasses, eyes meeting across candlelit tables. Leona's heart ached with longing and regret. She remembered when she and Miles used to do that, when every Friday night was an adventure, when he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. When had that stopped? She crossed the street, footsteps echoing on the wet pavement, and tried to shake off the memory. Their apartment was quiet when she got home. Leona hung her coat, set her bag by the door, and checked her phone. No new messages from Miles. The kitchen was spotless, dinner ingredients still waiting on the counter. Pasta, fresh basil, tomatoes from the market. She checked the time, 7:15 p.m. Miles should have been home by now. She sent a quick text. Hey, are you on your way? A few minutes later, her phone buzzed. Sorry, running late. Big deploy at work. Don't wait for me. Leona stared at the message, a familiar numbness settling over her. She cooked anyway, moving through the motions in silence. By the time she finished, the pasta was cold, and Miles still hadn't come home. She packed away his portion, cleaned up, and sat at the table alone, the city's lights flickering beyond the window. She scrolled through old photos on her phone, a beach trip, a birthday dinner, their wedding day. Miles's smile in those pictures felt like a stranger's now. Elsewhere in the city, in a brightly lit office filled with sleek desks and whiteboards scrawled with code, Miles was hunched over his laptop, headphones around his neck. Rafael Torres, his best friend and confidant at work, leaned against the desk, sipping from a water bottle. Man, you've been here since sunrise, Rafael said, watching the lines of code scroll by. You ever take a break? Miles rubbed his eyes. I will. Just need to get this push out. Deadlines are brutal. Rafael grinned. You say that every night. You sure you're not just avoiding going home? Miles gave a tired laugh. It's not that. There's so much to do. I feel like if I stop, I'll fall behind. Rafael studied him. Yeah, but you can't run on empty forever. How's everything with Leona? Miles hesitated, staring at the screen. She's good, I think. I don't know. We've both been busy. I just want to get through this crunch time and then I'll make it up to her. Rafael nodded, unconvinced. Don't wait too long, man. Sometimes you don't realize what you're missing until it's gone. Miles forced a smile, but the words lingered as he turned back to his work. The following weekend, the Whitakers attended a neighbor's birthday party in the apartment complex's community room. Music played softly, and the air smelled of pizza and vanilla cake. Leona stood by the refreshment table, making polite conversation with a few residents, but her eyes kept drifting to Miles, who was deep in discussion with a group from the tech company upstairs. She watched as he laughed at a joke, his whole face lighting up, and felt a pang of envy. It had been weeks since she'd seen him that animated at home. Jada, who had been invited as Leona's +1, sidled up. You okay? Leona nodded, picking at her napkin. He's just busy, always busy. Jada squeezed her arm. Talk to him, please. Leona nodded, but the words stuck in her throat. That night, after they returned home, Leona found herself staring at the ceiling in the dark, listening to the distant rumble of traffic and the steady breathing of Miles beside her. She turned, searching for the right words. Miles, she whispered. He stirred. Yeah? She hesitated. Never mind. Good night. He mumbled something unintelligible and rolled over, already half asleep. Leona pulled the covers tighter, feeling the weight of everything left unsaid. The days blurred together, commutes beneath gray Seattle skies, meetings where her ideas were overlooked, dinners eaten alone, Miles's absences explained by work, always work. One evening, as Leona trudged home from a work event, she slowed outside a bakery, peering in at a group of friends laughing over pastries. She felt like an outsider looking in on someone else's life. The ache in her chest grew sharper. She paused, looking up at the streaks of rain glistening under the streetlights, and asked herself, what do I do now? How much of this is my fault? Am I just too quiet, too easy to ignore? The questions echoed in her mind as she let herself into the empty apartment, setting her keys down with a soft clink. The silence that greeted her felt heavier than ever. Miles, for his part, barely noticed the change. His days were a blur of code, meetings, and emails. At home, he retreated to his laptop, telling himself that if he just finished this project, things would get better. He didn't see Leona's gaze lingering on him, or the dinners she cooked and ate alone. He didn't notice when she stopped waiting up for him. One night, Rafael caught up with him at the office after hours. Dude, when's the last time you and Leona did something together? Just you two? Miles frowned, thinking. I don't know. She's been busy too. Rafael shook his head. You sure about that? Or are you just too busy to notice? Miles bristled. It's not like that. I'm doing this for us. Rafael's tone softened. Just remember, work will always be here. She might not. Miles stared at his screen, the words blurring. He didn't reply. Leona sat on the couch one Friday night, the TV playing softly in the background. She absent-mindedly scrolled through social media, pausing on a post of a couple celebrating their anniversary. She glanced at the calendar on the wall, Her own anniversary was next week. She doubted Miles remembered. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears. Her inner voice rose, soft but clear. If you've ever struggled to have your feelings heard, hit subscribe and join the conversation below. What would you do in my place? The question lingered as the city lights flickered outside, and Leona wondered if anyone else out there felt as invisible as she did. Seattle's skyline was shrouded in a heavy silver mist. The rain had softened into a persistent drizzle, coating the city in a watery sheen. Inside the Whitakers' apartment, the air felt thick, as if the weather had seeped in, cloaking every corner with a quiet tension. It was almost midnight. The only light came from the under-cabinet LEDs in the kitchen, casting long shadows across the countertops and illuminating the takeout container that sat, barely touched, in front of Leona. She sat at the kitchen table, her posture rigid but her eyes hollow, watching the red digits of the microwave clock inch toward another hour without Miles. The street lamps outside flickered, their glow trembling on the rain-streaked glass. Leona's phone lay face down beside her, silent since her last hopeful check. Miles had texted an hour ago. Stuck at work. Sorry, don't wait up. No heart, no promise to make it up to her. No questions about her day. Leona's fork clattered against the plate as she let it fall, her appetite gone. She stared at the empty chair across from her, the one she'd placed his coffee mug at every morning, the one that had become just another piece of furniture. Her chest tightened with a sharp, familiar ache. A part of her wanted to sweep the dishes into the sink, crawl into bed, and let this night dissolve into another in a long, unbroken line of lonely evenings. But another part, the part that remembered laughter echoing through this apartment, the way Miles used to reach for her hand even in silence, refused to let this go unnoticed. She reached for a pen and a sheet of notepaper from the drawer. Her handwriting wavered at first, then steadied as the words poured out. Miles, I don't know if you'll read this tonight or if you'll even notice it in the morning. I need you to know that I feel invisible. I feel like I'm shouting in a crowded room, and you're the one person not looking at me. I miss the days you used to see me, when you'd really see me. I'm not angry. I'm just tired of trying to remind you that I exist. I love you, but I feel like a ghost in my own home. Leona. She placed the letter on the kitchen table, right next to his untouched mug, and went to bed, ignoring the gentle ping of another late-night work email on her phone. The city was still cloaked in gray when Miles finally returned home. The apartment was silent, but for the soft whir of the refrigerator. Miles slipped off his wet jacket, his mind replaying lines of code and unresolved bugs from the office, until his eyes landed on the folded note. He hesitated. Something about the neatness of the paper, the careful placement, made him pause. He picked it up, reading by the cold light of the kitchen. Each word felt heavier than the last, dragging him down into a pit of guilt that had no bottom. He sank into the chair, the same one Leona had stared at hours before, running his thumb over the edge of the letter. Suddenly, moments he'd dismissed as trivial replayed with painful clarity. The way Leona's voice faltered when he was distracted, her attempts to share stories over dinner, the nervous little laugh she gave when he forgot to ask about her day. He thought back to their first apartment in Atlanta, the way they'd once spent hours talking about everything and nothing, how she'd surprised him with homemade cupcakes after his first big promotion. Back then, he'd noticed every detail, her favorite mug, the playlist she made for rainy days, the way she bit her lip when she was anxious. But lately, everything had been filtered through the lens of work, deadlines, and fatigue. He'd let their rituals fade. He'd let her fade. He grabbed his phone and dialed her number, but it rang until voicemail picked up. He tried again, then sent a text. Leona, I'm home. Can we talk? No reply. Leona woke before dawn, the city still wrapped in a damp hush. She dressed quickly, jeans, a raincoat, sneakers, and slipped out before Miles could try again. The elevator doors closed with a soft sigh behind her, and she stepped into the gentle drizzle, letting the cold sting her skin awake. She walked aimlessly at first, wandering past the empty cafe where she and Jada had shared so many heart-to-hearts, the neon sign flickering against the glass. She passed the grocery store, where she'd once met Miles on a whim, and then, almost without thinking, found herself at the edge of the community park. The grass was slick, benches glistening, but the trees offered a little shelter. Leona sat on a bench beneath a cluster of maples, watching the city come to life one window at a time. She remembered the first time she and Miles had visited this park together, how he'd chased her through the puddles, both of them laughing, careless and young. They'd talked about dreams, travel, the little family they might have someday. She could almost hear his voice, warm and teasing. You're the only person who gets my jokes, Lee. She closed her eyes, the memory a bittersweet ache. Had she changed? Had he? Or had they simply let the world squeeze them into strangers? Her phone buzzed in her pocket, Miles again. She let it ring, unwilling to break the fragile peace she'd found in the hush of the morning. Meanwhile, Miles sat at the kitchen table, the letter still clutched in his hand. The apartment felt alien, every surface a reminder of his neglect. He wanted to do something, fix something, but the words in Leona's letter echoed louder than any apology he could muster. He scrolled through his contacts and, almost on instinct, tapped Raphael's number. "Hey, man," Raphael answered, voice groggy. "I messed up, Raph," Miles said, his voice thick with regret. "I think I really messed up with Leona." There was a pause on the other end, then a sigh. "Talk to me." "What happened?" Miles explained. About the late nights, the missed dinners, the way he'd let work swallow up everything. As he spoke, Raphael listened quietly. "You know," Raphael said finally, "you've been so deep in your own head, you forgot to look up. Leona's not asking for grand gestures, man. She just wants you to show up. Not physically, emotionally. You remember when you first started dating? You planned everything. You listened. Now you just let life happen to you." Miles rubbed his forehead, feeling the truth settle uncomfortably in his gut. I thought I was doing this for us. For the future. Future won't matter if you're alone in it," Raphael said gently. "Text her, call her. Better yet, find her. Don't let her think she's invisible any longer." Leona wandered deeper into the park, the world muffled by rain. She watched a young couple share an umbrella, laughing as their dog tugged at the leash. She envied their ease, the way they seemed present with each other, unburdened by the invisible walls she and Miles had built between them. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through old photos, her and Miles at Pike Place Market, grinning with paper cups of chowder, on a ferry, wind whipping her hair as he wrapped an arm around her. She'd saved all these moments, but lately, they felt like snapshots from someone else's life. Her thumb hovered over the delete button. Instead, she tucked the phone away and drew her knees up on the bench, breathing in the scent of wet grass and distant coffee. She didn't want to leave him. She just wanted to be seen. Across town, Miles paced the apartment, rehearsing apologies. He left voicemails, texts. "Leona, I'm so sorry. I read your letter. I get it now. Please, can we talk? Tell me where you are. I'll come to you. I'm listening." "I promise." He checked her favorite cafe, called Jada, who hadn't seen her, then remembered the park, their park. He grabbed his jacket and ran out, barely noticing the rain. Dusk was falling by the time Leona was ready to move. She stood, stretching cold, stiff limbs, and wandered to the far end of the park, past the playground where children's laughter now echoed faintly. The rain had slowed, sunlight trying to break through the low clouds. She sat on another bench, this one beneath a wide old maple, and closed her eyes. Footsteps crunched on the gravel path. She opened her eyes to see Miles, hair damp, breathless, scanning the park until their eyes met. He approached slowly, hands shoved deep in his pockets. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hush between them was thick with everything unsaid. Miles sat on the far end of the bench, leaving space, respecting her boundaries. "Leona," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I read your letter. I didn't realize how far away I'd gotten from you. I thought I was doing what I had to do, but I wasn't paying attention. Not to you. Not to us." Leona looked at her hands, twisting them in her lap. "I didn't want to hurt you. I needed you to see me again. I was starting to forget what it felt like." Miles's eyes filled with remorse. "You shouldn't have to ask for that. I took you for granted. I let work, everything else, come first. I'm sorry." She swallowed hard, the tears she'd held back all day now threatening to spill. "Do you even want to fix this, Miles? Or is it just guilt talking?" He shook his head. "It's not guilt, it's fear. I'm scared of losing you, and I didn't realize how close I was to doing just that. I want to fix this. I want to be better. I don't know how to start." Leona looked at him, really looked, searching for the man she'd fallen in love with. She saw the exhaustion, the regret, but also the earnestness, the same boyish hope she remembered from years ago. "Start by being here," she said softly. "Not just in the room, but here, with me." Miles nodded, the weight of her words settling in. "I can do that. I want to do that." A silence hung between them, not empty now, but filled with possibility. The sun finally broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the park. Leona took a shaky breath, her voice steadier. "I need you to see me, Miles. Not just today. Every day." Miles reached across the bench, his hand trembling. Leona hesitated, then placed her hand in his. The contact was electric, charged with pain and hope. "I see you," Miles said, voice cracking with sincerity. "I promise, I see you." For the first time in months, Leona believed him. The moment stretched, gentle and raw. The city around them faded into a gentle hush, and for the first time in a long while, they sat together, really together, on that rain-slicked bench as the evening unfolded. The answer Leona had longed for was simple, but profound. She was not invisible. And finally, for both of them, that was where the healing could begin. The park was quiet, the kind of quiet that only settles in just before night fully claims the city. The neon glow of downtown Seattle shimmered beyond the swaying trees, and the last traces of the day's rain lingered on the grass. Leona sat on the worn wooden bench, her hands clasped in her lap, jacket pulled tight around her. She could hear the gentle patter of Miles's footsteps approaching before she saw him. She didn't look up right away. Instead, she focused on the slow rise and fall of her breath, the cool air filling her lungs. For the first time in weeks, she felt present, grounded by the reality of her own feelings and the courage it had taken to finally express them. Miles stopped in front of the bench. He hesitated, uncertain, before sitting down beside her, leaving a respectful space between them. The silence stretched, heavy with everything unspoken. "I read your letter," Miles said, voice soft, but trembling. I had no idea you felt that way, Leona. Not really." He looked down, twisting his wedding ring with nervous fingers. "I should have noticed. I should have been there." Leona turned to face him, her eyes searching his. There was vulnerability there, a rawness she hadn't seen in a long time. "I tried to tell you, Miles. I really tried, but it always felt like you were somewhere else, like I was talking to a different person, or maybe just to myself." Miles's shoulders slumped. "I know. I think I hid behind my work because it was easier. Every time I felt stressed, I just buried myself in it. I thought I was doing it for us, but I guess I forgot that you're part of us, too." She nodded. The words were hard, but hearing them out loud made them real. "I stopped asking for your attention. I convinced myself it was selfish to need more." She swallowed, her voice steady but gentle. "But it wasn't selfish. I just wanted to feel seen." The city lights flickered through the leaves, casting patterns on the path before them. For a moment, neither spoke. The air was thick with apology and longing. Miles took a shaky breath. "I want to do better, Leona, but I don't know where to start." She looked down at her hands, then back at him. "We can start by talking, really talking. No phones, no distractions. We need to remember who we are together, not just who we are at work or with friends." Miles nodded slowly. "I want that. I want you to feel visible again, more than anything." For the first time in months, Leona let herself believe him, not because he promised to change overnight, but because he was here, truly present, both eyes and heart open. She could see the effort in the way he listened, the way he reached for her hand, unsure but hopeful. They sat in silence again, but it was a different kind of silence. Not the strained hush of avoidance, but the comfortable quiet of two people rediscovering each other. After a while, Miles spoke again, voice husky. "Maybe we could set aside one night a week. Just us. No work, no emails. We can cook, take a walk, whatever you want." Leona smiled, a small, real smile that she hadn't felt in a long time. "I'd like that, but I need you to know it's not just about one night. I need you to see me, even when life gets busy. I need us to check in, not just assume everything's fine." Miles squeezed her hand. "I hear you, and I know it'll take time to rebuild what I let slip away, but I'm willing to try, every day." A gentle wind stirred the branches above them. Leona closed her eyes, letting herself feel the simple reassurance of being heard. She thought of all the times she'd felt invisible, all the moments she'd doubted her worth. Now she realized her voice mattered, not just to Miles, but to herself. As they stood to leave, Miles offered his arm, an old gesture from their early days together, back when everything felt possible. Leona hesitated, then looped her arm through his. They walked home beneath the city lights, side by side, both changed by the vulnerability and honesty they'd finally shared. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the apartment windows. The air was crisp with the scent of fresh coffee. This time, Miles poured 2 mugs and set them on the table, handles aligned just the way Leona liked. She watched him, surprised, a quiet warmth blooming in her chest. He sat across from her, phone set aside. "Good morning," he said, smiling shyly. "Good morning," she replied, sipping her coffee. She noticed how he really looked at her, the lines of her face, the curve of her smile. It was a small moment, but it felt monumental. Days turned into weeks. There were setbacks, Old habits didn't break overnight. Sometimes Miles caught himself drifting into work mode, and Leona still hesitated to voice her needs. But each time they returned to the conversation they had started on that park bench. They asked each other real questions, shared frustrations and hopes. They made space for laughter and for quiet. One Saturday, they met Jada and Raphael for brunch at a bustling corner cafe. The group's energy was easy and bright, and for the first time, Leona didn't feel like a shadow in the background. She contributed stories, laughed freely, and Miles listened, really listened, sometimes squeezing her knee under the table, a silent reminder that he was there. Raphael caught Miles's eye as Leona chatted with Jada. He raised his mug in a subtle salute, approval and encouragement in that small gesture. Miles grinned back, gratitude shining in his eyes. Later, as Leona and Jada walked along the flower-lined street, Jada nudged her gently. "You seem lighter," she observed. "Like you finally stepped out of the fog." Leona smiled. "I think I let myself be seen, first. And that gave Miles the chance to really see me, too." Jada squeezed her arm. "I'm proud of you. It's not easy." "It's not," Leona agreed. "But it's worth it." One evening, as rain drummed softly on the windows, Leona and Miles cooked dinner together, each chopping, stirring, and tasting, laughter echoing through the kitchen. Later, they sat on the balcony, wrapped in a shared blanket, watching the city pulse with life below. Leona reflected on the journey, the pain of feeling invisible, the fear of speaking up, the courage it took to ask for more. She realized she was no longer waiting for someone else to validate her existence. She had learned to value her own needs, to speak her truth, and to trust that she was worthy of being heard. She turned to Miles, her voice steady. "Thank you for listening, for trying, even when it's hard." Miles looked at her, eyes soft. "Thank you for telling me, for not giving up on us." They sat together, the city a quiet symphony beyond the glass. In that moment, Leona knew they would stumble, falter, and have to find their way back again and again. But now, there was a path, paved with honesty, vulnerability, and the simple, powerful act of seeing and being seen. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, or struggled to be heard by someone you love, you're not alone. Leona's story is a reminder that real connection takes courage, patience, and a willingness to be vulnerable, even when it's scary. What about you? Have you ever had a moment where you finally spoke your truth, or someone finally saw you for who you are? I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell so you don't miss more real stories like this one. Your voice matters here. Thank you for being part of this community, and for seeing each other, one story at a time.